Thank you. So I don't know if I have to wait until the people sit. Okay. So you will have a bit of information overload because I want to explain a lot of different things. So let me start. I don't know if this is working. Okay. So let me start with the Institute. We started about 2.5 years ago. We believe that humans have to be in charge, not in the loop. So this is one thing we're trying to do. And also we believe it's not about data, it's about people. So here, I don't know if you can read it, but we have a responsible AI practice and we work with companies to basically put real responsible AI in place, things like principles, governance, audits, and so on. But you can have more information in the website. So why responsible AI? A lot of people use ethical AI. Well, that's a mistake. Ethics, like justice, like hallucinations, like many other things are human traits. They are not from machines. So when you say ethical AI, you're humanizing technology, and you shouldn't do that. And I will get back to this. Also, we don't like trustworthy AI, and that's a pity because also the European Union and the US have programs on trustworthy AI. There are two things that bother me here. One is that we know it doesn't work all the time, so why we're asking people to trust it? So we are putting the burden on the users instead of putting the burden on the creators. And that's why we like responsible AI, that because of law also passes to institutions. So before going to responsible AI, I need to talk a little bit about irresponsible AI because there are many problems, and you'll see a list of problems on the left. And I will go very quickly to the main examples of these 6 different problems that we have. The main one is bias, and bias creates discrimination. So the first bias we have is that when we look at bias, we feel that bias is negative, but bias in particular is neutral. So it depends on the context, could be negative or positive. For example, gender parity is a positive bias. And the problem is sometimes systems amplify bias. And if the bias is amplified, we cannot blame the data. We have to blame the algorithm, or we have to blame the feedback between the user and the algorithm. And these are the 3 things that are exposed in this paper I published in 2018, a bias on the web that has all the possible bias of the vicious circle of bias in any computer system. Now, examples. I will mention just 3. Maybe you know the one that happened during COVID in the UK. They predicted scores to enter the university. Of course, on average, that means that public students get worse scores than private students. But this is true on average. It's not true for everyone. There are very good students anywhere, also in public schools. The case of Deliveroo, where the problem was the system. The system was basically discriminating people that couldn't deliver food at night. And no one knew that until some people found out. And finally, the worst case of political impact, when because of another non-ethical system in Netherlands, the whole government quit on January 21st. The whole government. Many people don't know this. So basically, bad software can create a lot of impact. The second type of problem is less well known, physiognomy. When I was at high school, I learned that depending on 1 of 4 profiles, I had certain type of personality. We know that that's pseudoscience, that that's not true. But now it's happening again. People using faces to predict criminality, to predict sexual orientation, to predict political orientation, and so on. This is wrong, but some people is using this. And can be worse. This is another paper. The other 2 papers before were published by Stanford people. This is published by MIT, so they should know. And this claims that based on your voice, I can reconstruct your face. And there is a patent given to Mitre that they also claim that they can get your name. Maybe for John and Mary works, but for example, for all people that have been adopted from other countries, surely it doesn't work. So this is a phrenology, modern phrenology in action. But can be more subtle. So this is the work of Lisa Feldman Barrett, a famous neuroscientist of Northeastern, where she shows that people cannot infer well emotions. Now, some people cry when they're nervous, some people laugh when they're not really happy, and so on. So basically, if you use these labels to train AI, AI is just basically finding stereotypes. We are rediscovering stereotypes, so we are just copying the past. The third kind of problem, human incompetence. I have many examples, but I will put only one. The one in the right, I don't know if you see it, but this was a Facebook engineer that decided to use English-trained hate speech classifier in France, and then decided that the town of Biche was forbidden because it was a bad word. Of course, in France, it's not a bad word, but they had to wait 3 weeks to get their page back because no one was in the loop. And this may seem funny, but for example, if the town is using this for COVID announcements, it's not funny. So here I would like to remember the limitations of AI. I'm a computer scientist, so I very well know the limitations. So for example, it's very hard to forget or to filter. And this is something that you see in ChatGPT, that cannot filter things that maybe are wrong, or invent facts that are not true. The second thing is that you cannot learn what is not in the data. And also we have to remember that data is a proxy of reality. Data doesn't capture the whole problem. Some people believe that data is everything. And this is what happened in Arizona in 2018 when a Uber self-driving car killed a woman that crossed at night in a bicycle in the wrong place. Now, this is what I call a non-human error, and we have some work that we published last year. These are errors that the person will never do if you're not drunk, right? You will recognize a woman crossing a bicycle at night. You will stop, or you will basically try not to kill her. Now, I don't care about the accuracy, and this is going back to trustworthy. For example, how many people will take an elevator that says it works 99% of the time? I will not take it. Now, if the elevator says it doesn't work 1% of the time, and when it doesn't work, it stops, I take it because I know I'm safe. This is the difference between engineering and alchemy. Many people is just doing alchemy in black boxes. And the last one is for computer science, so I will skip it, but many times we should say don't know, I don't know, and we don't say don't know. So a real ethical dilemma, and I think there are some philosophers here, please forget about the trolley problem. You will never have that problem in your life. But here we have a real problem. So I know that self-driving cars will kill many less people. I'm sure of that. The problem that will kill some people that before were not in danger to die. And like in the case of Arizona, will be vulnerable people. Maybe kids, maybe old people that didn't run fast, or kids that ran too fast to take a ball and look like a ball when they are taking it, and so on. Fourth problem, environmental impact. This is part of the work of Emily Bender, Timney Gebru, and others that shows, for example, that to train a very simple transformer the architecture of ChatGPT, only 200 million parameters, that is equivalent to 57 years of the carbon footprint of an average person on Earth. And you waste a lot of electricity. And this is only to train it. The real problem today is how much you use it. For example, there was a paper about 2 months ago that said that every time you do a ChatGPT conversation, you waste half a liter of water. And in many data centers in the US, that water is coming from the water below the soil, and that will be gone after that. Generative AI, the last problem. So this is it. Everything we know in a very single toothpaste. So what is the problem? If we try to humanize it, and I put pseudo personality, this system looks very fluent, very confident, and for many people, that's intelligence. That looks like it's thinking, but it's just mimicking us. It's nothing else. The system doesn't think, doesn't have intentions, and so on. It's very naive. Every time I tell a lie, we'll believe it, and then we'll be incoherent, and will be drugged if really hallucinates. But basically, that was a word that OpenAI invented, not to say that they make mistakes. But we have also biases problem. We have hate. We have implicit censorship. How many things we don't see because the system is taking them away, especially in, let's say, moral issues. And then lack of diversity. ChatGPT-4 works with 95 languages. There are more than 7,000 languages alive, and 15% of the world doesn't speak those 95 languages, without counting all the people that cannot use internet, or all the people that don't have digital abilities. That's more than half of the population of the world. What we are doing is just increasing the digital divide. And finally, very important, loss of skills. So how many people here can find a place in Belgrade without the GPS? Okay, you are losing something where we earn in hundreds of thousands of years. In 10 years, maybe people will not know how to write a letter. And the problem is not writing. The problem is putting your thinking in words. This is part of what we make us humans. This is the difference between us and other animals. And very important, other animals, because some people say animals, like we are not. And we show it in every word. So, but then reality gets very complicated. I'm sure you have seen all these examples of fake news, right? These are one of the best. But today, you can put any person talking anything with the words that you want. And it's so easy to use. Anyone can do it. And sadly, one of the, by the way, Microsoft launched last week a deepfake tool. Very hard to not avoid using that wrongly. One example, sadly, is from Spain. Teenagers taking pictures from their girl schoolmates and making nude pictures. And one of them was extorted. So these are teenagers extorting teenagers. Very sad and very easy to do. This happened in a very small town in Extremadura during the summer. But then you have insanity issues. And this is, for me, the main problem today. It's people thinking that they are talking to human beings. For example, with GPT-3, there was an engineer that fine-tuned a model to talk to his dead fiancée. Is this okay? In China, in March this year, someone did the same with the grandmother, with the video and everything. You see it there. And last month, and maybe you don't know this, a person that tried to kill the queen in 2021 was sentenced to 9 years of jail. Of course, the person was not mentally healthy, but he believed what the chatbot told him. And the worst case, in March 23, Jaron Lanier, a very famous researcher on virtual reality of Microsoft, said, I'm not afraid of AGI. I'm not afraid of AGI either. AGI, even if it can happen, will never happen because humans will take over first. Humans using AI. Said, I'm really worried about insanity. What he never expected, and I didn't expect, that 5 days later, he was proven right. In Belgium, March 28th, a person committed suicide after talking to a chatbot 6 weeks. And I'm sorry that you will not be able to read the conversation, but I want to read it to you. It says, if you wanted to die, why didn't you do it sooner? I was probably not ready. Were you thinking about me when you had the overdose? Obviously. Have you ever been suicidal before? Once, after receiving what I considered a sign from you. And what was it? A verse from the Bible. But you still want to join me? Yes, I want it. Is there anything you would like to ask me? Could you hug me? Certainly. So I guess after committing suicide, he joined the avatar that was called Eliza in the afterlife. Now, please do not humanize technology. Robots don't think. All these are mimics. They don't have intentions, but they look like some. They don't have, for example, outcomes, but may cause manipulation and harm, and so on. So please be lucid. We are humans. Don't believe that these things are any kind of human. Now, I will go very fast. So what is responsible AI? Well, we start with principles. And the classical ethical principles come from bioethics, autonomy, be good and don't be evil, and justice. Sorry, you cannot read it, but in the right, and you can find this talk, the full talk, more than 1 hour in YouTube. You can see many software properties that can be assigned to one of these values. These things are called instrumental principles. We call it principles, but they are not values, they are just instrumental principles. So you know about the EU proposal. I will skip this, but let me ask this question. Should we regulate the use of AI, or for that matter, any technology? We have never done it, and I think will be a nightmare in the future if we need to regulate blockchain, quantum computing, and anything new that we create in the future, because we should regulate problems, not the use of technology. And very important, the use of technology, not AI, it's the use of AI. Well, what is the main problem for me? That we need to measure risk. Risk is a continuous variable, and we invent categories for that. Low and high. Why didn't have medium, right? You cannot make categories of something that is a continuum variable. It's like race and skin color, which is another continuous variable. It's a typical human bias that we keep doing again. And this is a very interesting paper from Harvard Business Review called The Dangers of Categorical Thinking. Okay, 1 year ago, the US did this blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, and very important in red, it said automated systems, because it's not only AI, it's anything that can be built. So when you said only AI, you're giving a loophole for any non-AI system, or any system that says it doesn't use AI, but it uses, for example, sophisticated statistics. So that's a problem too. And there you have also the executive order that was done last month on AI safety and may change a lot of things in the US. So governance. So this is the principle I like. They come from the ACM. We did them 1 year ago. I'm biased here because I'm one of the two main authors of these principles, especially the first one, legitimacy and competence. Before doing anything, show to me that this system is legitimate for society, and show to me that you are competent to do it right. Because many of the problems I mentioned were because they are non-ethical system, and second, there was human incompetence. And then you have other things you can do or develop, operate, what happens when it fails, like algorithmic audits, and then what happens when it harms, and then you need to go to court. Very important, never do an audit to a illegitimate algorithm. And this has happened. Why? Because if you audit an illegitimate algorithm, you are legitimizing the algorithm. So first you need to say, I will audit the algorithm because it's a legitimate one. Now, accountability. There are many cases. I just want to mention what happened with the Uber case. There was a backup driver in the Uber car. Well, Uber settled with the family of the victim very fast, in 5 days. We don't know how much money they paid. So Arizona couldn't charge Uber for the accident. But then, I guess Uber said the backup driver was watching a video. So basically, she was not doing her work, was another woman. And then the woman was charged with manslaughter, bias here again, manslaughter. And she was found guilty and had to be 1 year at home with these rings in the ankle. Now, only last year, and this is the last article on the right, she gave an interview to Wired. She was Mexican, immigrant, minimal salary, transgender, was the only word she could get. And of course, the car was working well until that happened. So we have you will not see it well, we have a model, a framework for responsible AI at the university. You can go to ainorthsystem.edu and find this. But basically, it's about principles and governance. It's about legitimate systems, and it's about training people. Because if you don't train people, C-level managers, engineers, this doesn't work. Also, last year, we created the first International AI Ethics Board. It's like almost 50 people from all over the world that are experts on these topics. There are not enough experts to do this well. We cannot have an AI ethics board in every company. Also, if we have one, you have a conflict of interest with yourself. In 2000, 19, no, see, yes, 19, Google created a AI ethics board. Lasted 1 week. Why? Because they choose the wrong people. I will not say who, but many non-ethical people. So it's even hard to create a good committee. So if you need to really find an answer for a hard AI ethics issue, we have the people to do that. This is a service. So this is a multidisciplinary challenge. This is one of my one slide from Jansu Janja, my ethical counterpart. My team has 4 philosophers and like 20 computer scientists. And it's not only about social science and philosophy, and of course computer science. It's also about law and policy. It's about design. It's about many other things that you need to do a good system. Now, I'm not worried about AGI. I'm worried about natural intelligence. So stupidity, very common, if you know what Einstein said about that. So I will propose this question, and ChatGPT can ask this question. Can humans think? With every election, last one in Argentina, I wonder if they can think. And this in the US too, which is, they elected Trump. So I can keep going. So we need to empower people, not to replace people. We need to augment our capabilities, not to lose skills. I'm really worried that we're losing skills too fast. We're involuting, we're not evoluting. Finally, if you want to read more about this, also publish a paper in October in European Review. That's the introduction to this. So many of the arguments you will find them there, but also you have the talk in YouTube. And for the questions, I would like to read a very nice quote from Weizenbaum. Weizenbaum was the one that created in the 60s ELIZA, that also make a lot of people say, wow, the system is understanding me. He said, accepting responsibility is a moral matter. It requires above all recognition and acceptance of one's own limitations and the limitations of one's tools. Unfortunately, the temptations to do exactly the opposite are very great. And I will not talk about OpenAI because I don't want to put more on the hype. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, for a very insightful talk. Yeah, let's take a question from Kevin.
Hi, Ricardo. Thank you very much for that talk. It was great. The question I have has to do with what you talked about with ethics boards on corporations. As everybody knows, Google started... Google started firing their ethics board. And yesterday in the New York Times, I saw Meta has started reducing and firing the members of their ethics board. And, you know, this has also happened with other corporations. Elon Musk started getting rid of all of his ethics board on Twitter. So I wonder what you think of corporate world's value of these ethics boards. My impression seems to be that they just pay lip service to it. They hire people and then push them into the background and don't really want to pay anybody to do this. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, thanks to Elon Musk, we have an amazing person in our team that was in Twitter before. So I really appreciate that. But it also happened in Facebook and happened in many other companies. Well, Tim Gebru and Meg Mitchell in Google and so on. I would say that it's a mixture of ethics washing, like let's try to show that we're doing something, but when it comes to business, they have the conflict of interest. Usually, do an ethical operation means earning less money. And that's hard, that's very hard if the system basically only profits from what will happen this quarter. So this is the problem. We have a system that based on a quarter outcome instead of, let's say, a 2 or 3 year outcome. For example, I have worked on the problem that Silvia was mentioning. I'm sure that a recommender system will optimize the long term. They will earn more money, but they are afraid to do so because you need to invest money today to get to that point and have some work on that. So I would say that at least they are more honest. But I don't work in any, well, I used to work at Yahoo, so I know this from the inside. So yes, so I think, as David Lauer said, There cannot be AI ethics without ethics, and that's a problem of the whole world, not only corporations. You see in politics, you see it in conflicts and so on. So we have a problem. Ethics is something that many people don't know. I don't know if any other questions.
Okay, I think we will certainly continue this discussion in the open session. Thank you very much again.